For the past few years, officials in Boston have pledged to provide immigrants with the benefits of a sanctuary city while avoiding the drawbacks. But civil rights groups say in at least one case, efforts to avoid the drawback of gang violence went too far. That's the backdrop to a legal challenge asking for more disclosure on the sharing of information gathered by the Boston police with federal agents. To explain is a staff attorney with the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts, Adriana Lafaille. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me.
The city's supposed to limit collaboration with the feds. There are times when it's necessary. And I guess there are times when you're saying that it could go the wrong way. What's an example of that?
Well, we've really seen a number of examples in recent years where Central American youth, for example, start attending school, and simply by moving through their day-to-day life in school, they begin racking up points. So we've seen kids who have never been arrested, never been charged with a crime, but are deemed to be gang members based on the BPD's point system, which I can talk about in a minute. And that then leads them to see consequences on the immigration side, including being detained and denied bond based on being a quote-unquote verified gang member, and then ultimately deported.
What is this point system exactly?
So the point system is the method that the BPD uses for determining whether someone is a gang member or gang associate. And it takes 10 points to be a gang member. So the definition of a gang member in the gang database is someone who has more than 10 points. And you can rack up these points fairly quickly. So for some kids, just being seen in school with another kid who is alleged to be a gang member leads to 5 points. Being the victim, not the perpetrator, the victim of a gang attack or of a crime that is deemed to be gang related gets you 8 points. So you're almost a gang member in the BPD's terms. And what we see is with police looking at kids as they walk down the street or hang out in the park and stopping kids and looking at who they're hanging out with and then looking at their Facebook profiles, kids can quickly rack up these points simply by the things that they're wearing or the people that they're with, even when there's really no indicia of criminal conduct whatsoever.
Well, on the other end of the spectrum, there really is some gang violence. There was a crackdown on MS-13 people that started even before Trump was elected. So don't you need a database to deal with things like that?
Well, that's why we're really here asking for more information. What we'd like to understand is, how is this database being used? What kinds of people are being put into it? Are there procedures for correcting mistakes? Are there procedures for getting out of the gang database? And how's the information in the database being shared and then being used? Because what I think cities have seen who have taken a look at their gang databases more closely is that often these databases can be full of misinformation and they can have very powerful racial discriminatory effects.
If somebody is listed with a certain number of points, now the police have a database that can be shared with the federal authorities, what can happen to them?
Well, we think a number of things can happen to people, from getting more police attention, right? Getting stopped more often by the police. We've heard of people trying to enter the military where alleged gang membership has been an issue. But the thing that has really brought this to our attention and allowed us to learn more about the workings of the gang database, to the extent that we're able to know anything at all right now, is the use of these gang allegations in immigration court. And there, what we see is that often kids really, just a little bit over 18 or even under 18 are brought before the immigration court as alleged gang members. And when you have a federal agency and a state and local law enforcement agency saying to an immigration judge, this is a verified gang member, even though that verification may be based just on what that child was wearing in school and who his schoolmates were, that becomes a very powerful thing in that immigration case. And what we see over and over again is that it leads to the denial of bond, so that kids are locked up throughout their whole immigration proceeding. And then it can be a very powerful force leading to the denial of relief that those youth maybe would have had a stronger chance at getting, such as asylum or protections for special juveniles.
This has been a news, and we're talking with Adriana Lafaille from the ACL, Massachusetts. Adriana, what about potential gray areas? I can imagine a lot of kids, and not just immigrant kids, especially young guys, they want to look tough, they want to blend in, they don't want to seem vulnerable. Couldn't that also put them at risk of being at least identified as a gang member, and maybe they're really not?
I think that's exactly right. And one of the saddest things I've heard in the course of working on this public records request and complaint is an immigration attorney who told me that she breathed a sigh of relief when her kids dropped out of school, because it meant that they would be less likely to be around all of those pressures to dress a certain way, and that they would be less likely to be profiled while walking around with their friends. And that just, is an indication of how far awry our system has gone, and the need to really stop and scrutinize this more closely.
How much can the police department be expected to disclose here? Because this is sensitive information, even the information that's really good. Don't they have to be careful about releasing this?
Absolutely. Our public records laws do give the police room to redact and withhold information that, in certain circumstances is critical to an investigation. But what we're seeing here is that the police have failed on a much larger scale to turn over any information at all. And again, we're not seeking here the names of the people in the gang database. We're not seeking specific information about specific investigations. What we're trying to do is gain a broader picture of just how many people are in this database anyway. Is it true that, like in other cities, that the vast majority of them are Black and brown youth? Those are questions that we don't have the answers to, and we think, particularly given the devastating consequences that this is having for some kids, that it is time that we stopped and got some basic information about the workings of this system.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Adriana Lafaille from ACLU, Massachusetts. Up ahead, a new release sheds new light on a trailblazing American composer, but first, this message.